Hey guys, how's everybody doing? So, a quick video. Is it possible to lower a car too much? The simple answer is absolutely it is. We sell H&R springs. A lot of people ask us, well, H&R only lower the car by 35 millimeters, and I want to lower it by 50 millimeters. Do you have anything? And the answer is, well, you can put coilovers on the car if you want, lower it by 50 millimeters that way. The key thing with the coilovers is they're adjustable, so you can have it low when you need it, and then you can raise it up again, you know, for the real world. So for springs wise, like H&R springs, like Eibach springs, etc., this is a fixed suspension. So, well, I'm sure H&R could sell more springs if they offered bigger lowering. For example, you know, 35, 50 millimeters, 55, 60 millimeters. I'm sure they could sell more springs if they offered a super low kit. But the fact is, they're doing people a favour really by not offering springs that lower the car so much. So what is the problem with lowering too much? What can happen? Well, many things can happen to a car suspension when you lower it too much with regards to the geometry. Generally speaking, when you lower a car, it's going to get more camber, but camber really is the least of your worries when you're lowering the car. I mean, camber is not necessarily a bad thing. I've done other videos on camber, so I'm not going to get into that in this video, but you know, camber is not necessarily a bad thing. Bump steer. When the car is manufactured, it is designed to work at a certain ride height, like an optimal ride height. So if the car is lowered too much, you're going to go outside what is optimal, and the whole point of lowering the car generally is to make the car perform better. So if you're going outside the optimum suspension geometry, the car's going to behave worse than what it did as standard. So unless you're going for looks only and you don't care about anything else, you want to stay within the optimum, you know, range of suspension for the car. So your steering rack is mounted at a certain level in relation to the wheels. So if you're going to lower the suspension, you're going to be altering that angle, and not only are you altering that angle in a stationary static position, when you're going over bumps and that, the suspension geometry is going to go even further outside the optimum. And it's at these extremes, it's when the steering arms on the tie rods, if you like, on the steering rack are going to have adverse effects on the wheel. Their arc of travel is going to start affecting the arc of travel of the wishbone adversely, and this is going to lead to the car wanting to, well, the steering wheel wanting to steer when you're going over bigger bumps. Basically, you've got two things moving in different arcs, and one is moving at a different rate to the other, and you're getting unusual motions, forces going through the steering wheel. Probably the most obvious negative of lowering the car too much is crashing and banging of the suspension. And the lower you go, the more excessive the banging and the crashing is. And basically this is because, again, it's all about the wishbone angle in relation to the car. So when you lower the car too much, the spring rate is being lowered in the car. There's being more leverage applied to the spring than it was before. So in effect, you're softening the suspension, even though you've lowered it with a harder spring. Very hard to explain without diagrams. But I think we can just summarize in saying, if you lower the car too much, you can start to lower the spring rate, which softens the suspension, which makes it more likely to bottom out, which causes crashing and banging, and can also, you know, severely affect the amount of grip that the car has, the amount of cornering performance it has, because you're riding on the bump stops rather than riding on the springs. So it's just generally, it just becomes uncomfortable, it becomes noisy, and the performance goes down. If you're prepared to sacrifice all that for looks, then you know, good for you, you know. Ultimately, you want the car to perform normally and at its best, but you want the car to look as good as possible. then I would personally go with the ride height that's recommended by H&R. They are quite flexible in H&R. I mean, they're not sticking to 30mm just because 30mm is their thing. I mean, at the end of the day, car manufacturers have got to build the cars to work okay. You know, if the car has got 4 people riding in it, for example, and a load of luggage, they don't want the car to be having bump steer or drive shafts issues or banging and crashing because, you know, there's 4 or 5 people in the car. But when there's 4 or 5 people in the car is going to be lower, 30mm probably, more than likely, or more, with the original suspension. So, you know, you can exploit that optimum range for making the car, you know, look better at in normal driving, you know. So I think that H&R do their research. You know, if their car has got a huge range of suspension where it will work, you know, okay, it's not going to compromise the performance of the car, I think they're going to do it, you know. So maybe they'll offer a 35mm suspension and they'll offer a 55mm suspension. And for some cars they do offer this choice, but for other cars they don't. So I'd be tempted to say, if H&R don't offer a 50mm lowering kit or lowering spring kit for your car, then there's probably a reason for that. I think we've all been there, you know, lower is better, but, you know, having been there myself, I mean, this car is running on 60mm lower teen springs. Basically, I was younger when I put these springs on this car, and I thought, you know, lower is better. But honestly, it has quite compromised the car quite badly in the handling department. You know, H&R for this car offer I think it's again probably a 35mm lowering kit, and that would, you know, be optimal for this car. So that's it, guys. A lot of rambling, I know, as usual. But if you're wondering, you know, can I lower the car too much, then the answer is absolutely yes. And hopefully this video has explained, you know, the consequences of lowering the car too much, and so you can work out if it's a compromise you're prepared to make. Or if you're wondering why companies like H&R don't offer, you know, springs with bigger lowering compared to other maybe cheaper manufacturers that offer, you know, big, you know, 50-60mm lowering for most cars. You know, this is the reason why. H&R, their priority above all else is performance, and they want to make the car look as good as it can, while performing at its best. Well, that was a video, guys. As always, please subscribe to the channel, vote on the video, and I'll see you again next time.